Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What's Bruin here on the Hockey Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chris Nozick, joined by the legendary, my co-host, Dominic Tiano. And looking forward to talking some bees here on the show. Dom, how you been? It's been a week.
By bees, do you mean Bruins or bumblebees? Because bumblebees might be a better topic.
They're having a better time right now, that's for sure.
You
One
got
over
that right.
three on the road trip. And well, last week we said that 4 points would be a success. These 4 points don't feel like a success.
No, kind of disappointing that when you hear the players talk immediately afterwards, that they were content, but they weren't content. It's just the way they left points on the table has got to be disappointing as a fan, but it should be really pissing off the players.
Yeah, I mean it's pissing off the fans, that's for sure.
Yeah.
To the point where rationale sometimes isn't in existence. But I do want to have anyone who can jump in the comments, questions. We want to hear it all from you. This episode brought to you by our good friends over at Nason's Naturals, all natural dog treats for your furry friends. Go to nasonsnaturals.com and at checkout, use our sister show's code PUCKOFF and you'll get 15% off at checkout. So if you got furry friends, give them nothing but the homemade best. But yeah, shout out to anyone who's watching. Hopefully we can get some comments and questions in here. Like I said, rationale though for Bruins fans, it doesn't exist on Twitter anymore, or X, or whatever we call it these days. The road trip, not so great. How worried are you about the lack of ability to hold a lead going into overtime? Or having the games go into overtime because you can't hold a lead? Let me rephrase that.
Um, it's very concerning because this team is known, or the Bruins are known for being able to close games out. I just don't think the roster is built for it this season. You all season long, I've been talking about this being a transition year, and
Yep.
that's what it is. Um, Sorry to say it, and I do believe that that's the way Bruins management is looking at it. Um, that said, 3-on-3 doesn't concern me because there isn't 3-on-3 in the playoffs. What is really concerning to me is uh, I'll use the Vancouver game as an example where um, the Canucks took physical liberties with David Pasternak, and there was zero response. Where was Trent Frederick? Where was Derek Forbert? Um, those are the big guys who are supposed to be physical, and there was zilch, zero, nothing. And I mean, that's a regular season game, less than 60 games into the season. What's going to happen in the playoffs when that intensity and that physicality picks up?
So I guess the simple question is, what do you do to fix it?
Well,
Is it something that you're seeing fundamentally flawed on the roster, or is it something that some of them are picking and choosing their battles, like a guy like Frederick?
I don't think Frederick is even picking and choosing his battles. Um, the whole Milan Lucic situation, as terrible as it was supposed to be the answer for the Bruins. A guy like Lucic makes everybody else play bigger.
Yep.
He goes out, he crashes, he sets the tone, and everybody follows. Frederick just isn't that type of player. He's not. Um, so to me, it's a fundamentally flawed roster in that department.
So in your opinion, what is the answer? Now, you and I have had some conversations on plenty of shows in the past. Who do you have as tradable assets? What are the assets that Don Sweeney has to work with at the deadline? You and I understand that it's a dollar in, dollar out situation. Basically, it's not exactly dollar for dollar, but it's close enough. You're talking 97 cents for every dollar you send out. You bring in, you have to send a 97 cents out or whatever it is. It's so close that it's not worth doing the math. And we like doing the math around here.
Yeah, it's roughly $57,000 difference. So if you're sending out $3 million, the most you can bring back is $3,057,000.
Yeah.
So
which, not exactly a big difference.
No. It's negligible. I mean, it doesn't even register on the cap radar. So,
do they go that far down on Cap Friendly and Puckpedia to the decimal like that?
No, they round to the nearest dollar.
So yeah, they don't even. That's how negligible it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they've got their work cut out for them in the front office, and we'll get into some rumors. I don't want to actually say rumors, things I'm hearing a little later, because they are in discussions. They are.
And I'm glad you worded it that way, because what I want to emphasize to people out there is, if they're not in discussions, Don Sweeney's not doing his job.
Right.
Case in point. Does that mean anything is imminent? No. Does that mean player names are going to be brought up? Yes. Name a player. We'll go through the roster real quick in just a minute. I want to do a quick exercise with you. So as far as the names that you would be bringing up or shopping or discussing, as it were, we'll kind of review what they have for those tradable assets and whatnot. I think one thing that we know for fact, Don Sweeney is not going to pull the trigger on a deal that doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make sense for this year and going forward.
Right.
Okay.
It may not help this year, but with that kind of deal, it's going to help for next year.
Right. In other words, no rentals. I think that's the way they're looking at it. They've got all this money to spend for next season. They might bring in one guy as a spare part or an extra forward or something that may have just this season remaining on a deal. But if they're looking forward, which I'm 99.9% positive that they're looking for term, or at least have the knowledge, like Hampus Lindholm, that they will be able to re-sign that player.
Right. And I think that's part of what is holding up, as some people are just trying to shout into existence a deal to get Noah Hannafin. For one, the assets that it's going to take to give up to get him, you have him. A team like Tampa Bay doesn't have nearly what you have in order to go after him.
Right. Now, let's just start with Noah Hannafin, because
do we want to start with what we have to trade first, or do you want to start with
we'll start with what I know, because I don't want to speculate. I don't want to guess. I don't want to come up with proposals. I'm here to discuss what I know. So a very good friend of mine who is connected with an NHL team that is not the Calgary Flames and not the Boston Bruins has told me the Bruins are heavy on Noah Hannafin. They are busting their butts to get a deal done, but require a third team.
That does not surprise me because of how close everybody is to the cap.
Right. That's that's the stumbling block. Now, would I make the deal considering what it's going to take to get him? And you have not, and I have talked about this on previous shows. That the first ask by the Calgary Flames is going to be Mason Lohrei or Matthew Poitras.
Now, with that said, we've talked about Mason Lohrei having potentially a higher ceiling than Noah Hannafin on defense.
I didn't know. We never said potentially. I downright told you that in 3 years, Mason Lohrei is going to be a better player.
I'll take the correction on that one.
I never said potentially. I said a definite he will be.
Okay. So if he's going to be a better defenseman than Noah Hannafin, do you really want to include him in a deal to get Noah Hannafin?
No, I would not. Okay.
I
would not.
Everyone, a lot of people have made a lot of statements as far as this Bruins team needs a number one center. Don't you have that potentially in Matthew Poitras?
I honestly believe that they do. That's why I was dead against giving him up in a proposed Elias Lindholm deal.
So
don't forget, I was the one who was on your show May of last year and said, when you were talking to me about guys that could potentially make the roster for this season, everybody was throwing out Mason Lohrei or Fabian Lysell or Georgi Merkulov, and I said, don't sleep on Matthew Poitras.
Those were your exact words. I remember it vividly, and yes.
And that 100%. Was before last season was over. So, yes. No, I wasn't willing to give him up for Elias Lindholm, and I'm not willing to give him up for Noah Hannafin.
So removing those two guys off the table, all right, and we got Dan jumping in. You called Poitras ages ago. Yep, that's the whole thing. You called it over a year ago before he even went to his first. Was this year his first dev camp, or was he there last year? I don't even remember.
No, he was there last year. I called it May of last year. The playoffs weren't even over yet.
Okay. I remember it was an early call. It was, yeah. So it's a great call for you. And my question is why would you ever want to give that guy up in a deal? You're just going to create a new hole for yourself to fill down the road. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right, because you've got him potentially for the next 15 years.
Right. And let's not forget that you've got him for the next 2 on an ELC.
Right. So
let's not forget that fact.
So if obviously they're not going to trade what it's going to take to get Noah Hannafin without knowing they can sign him. Let's say that for all intents and purposes, they got permission from Calgary to speak to his agent. They know what it's going to take. The dollars, the term, whatever, whether it's a sign and trade or a trade and sign. Preferably a sign and trade because you can then get him for 8 years. Then
that's what we're talking about, Trey.
What do you give up to get him? I would be willing, and I've said this to you just last week. I said, as far as I'm concerned, if all the players in the system reach their potential, that Fabian Lysell is a better prospect than Mason Lohrei. Now, to say that I would give him up is contradictory to what I said earlier about what kind of contradictory that I would not give Mason Lohrei up for Fabian Lysell. Well, 2 different positions, right? Defenseman versus a winger. I'm keeping the defenseman. So I would part with Fabian Lysell. Unfortunately, it's going to cost your 2025 first round pick.
And you have to someone to make the money work.
And you have to make the money work. And this is where Jake DeBrusk comes in. And I'll go into more detail about Jake DeBrusk later. If you can move Jake DeBrusk, you can make the money work.
Yeah.
Okay. But is Lysell in the first enough for Calgary to say yes?
Not
Probably
with an
not.
place. That's the thing.
Right.
Is there not with it, you can get him to do a sign and trade and get the 8th year. They're going to hold that over your head and say, "Give us more."
Right. But can you get a second for Jake DeBrusk this year and make it Fabian Lysell, your 2024 second round pick, and your 2025 first round pick?
Is that enough to do it with an extension? Is the question.
I don't know.
That's where the unknown comes into play. Now, Dan has a good question here. He asks about the cap going up next year. Does that factor in here? The problem is getting him in under contract for the remainder of this year and fitting it for this year, at least for a guy like Hanifin. His extension won't kick into next year. However, that won't be affected. Like you got to get him in under this year's cap and worry about 2024 before you can worry about the 24-25 season.
They have no problem for next season.
No, they have what,
no
like
problem.
30 million?
Well, if they move to DeBrusk, they'll have $30 million.
Yeah. Now Trey is saying, and this doesn't seem like it would work, in my opinion. Oh, I'm freezing up a little bit here.
But back to your question.
The problem with this, Trey, is why would they take Derek Forbort? You literally just devalued your own package by including another expiring contract.
Yeah, Calgary's got no interest in Derek Forbort.
Even if they were willing to take him off your hands, they're not going to do it for free.
No, it's going to cost you. But back to your question. Now I forget what it was because
it's not enough, Trey. A fourth Forbort's not enough. Sorry to cut you off.
Wait, you asked whether that was enough for Calgary to say yes. That all depends on Noah Hanifin and his agent. If he says to them, "I'll only consider signing an extension for Boston," which he has every right to do, then yeah, that's enough for Calgary because no other team is going to beat that offer without knowing they can sign him to an extension.
Not to mention the fact that you actually can put that kind of package together for him. If you look at what, let's say, Tampa, who's been rumored to be involved with him, they don't have their first rounder next year. So in this instance, you actually have a leg up on them because you do have your 2025 first.
Right.
You should use it to your advantage. And actually, I don't think Florida has their first either for next year.
I don't think so either.
I know they're limited as well, but they've been mentioned around the Hanifin pool as well. Let's see, they have no first or second this year, no first next year, and let's see, it looks like there's a condition for their 2026 first rounder as well. So, unless they want to gut out the next 2 years of third round picks plus next 2 years of second round picks, they're not going to be fishing around with picks. They're going to be using prospects and other draft, other pieces. But a lot of the pieces that they have are on expiring UFA deals.
No, this talk about the Bruins can't beat anybody else's offer is nonsense because it all comes down to what Noah Hanifin wants. If he says he'll only agree to sign an extension for Tampa and Boston can beat Tampa's offer.
Right. And Trey mentions there was a report earlier in the season from a TV reporter insider that said that teams are hesitant because Hanifin wants to be in Boston. Now, I've also heard he wants to be in Tampa. He wants to go to Florida. He only wants U.S. teams. Like,
Well,
I'm not saying there's no
first,
truth to it.
no, but Chris, the whole thing, and I wrote extensively about this just a couple of weeks ago. Beware of rumors at this time of year.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Trey is talking about Renaud Lavoie from TVA, or no, that's not his name. Whatever his name is from TVA, the French guy. You're talking about Frank Saravelli. Go look up their track records, and you tell me who you should be listening to.
Again, I'm not saying that there's no credit to any of the reports or to none of them. All I'm saying is honestly, it doesn't really matter because we just don't know what he's told them.
Right. It doesn't.
And let's say Hanifin did go to Craig Conroy and say, I'm only interested in re-signing with Boston. Craig Conroy at that point has every reason in the world to come out and say he told us he only wants to sign with Tampa.
No, but the Bruins would know that because it would be through the agent.
You would think.
It definitely would be because the Bruins aren't going to go make a trade based on what Craig Conroy says. Don Sweeney's going to say, okay, give me permission to talk to his agent.
And then Craig will, obviously want to try and get the best deal. So he's going to give him that. Let's see. Trey says that Tampa thing was complete bullshit. Saravelli is the only one who said that shit. Notice how no other insider has said that shit. I think the report was shit.
Yeah. So, but back to my point. Even if Hanifin said, "I will only sign in Boston, Florida, or Tampa," Florida and Tampa cannot beat the Bruins' offer.
No.
As I proposed it.
Now we have another one coming in on YouTube from Swede Chef. DeBrusk is going to Edmonton or Nashville. Bruins will get a roster player back making under $2 million or about $2 million, freeing up $2 million cap room. The Bruins get cap room to facilitate Calgary Hanifin trade. Jake DeBrusk.
Because that only clears him $2 million. That's not good. That's not enough to fit Hanifin in.
It's not. But I digress on that part. What I was going to say is the part of Jake DeBrusk. And actually, Matrix Mania has another one here. Can we speak of the new report by Elliot Friedman with Ottawa having a lot of interest in Ullmark, mentioning DeBrusk? These were pieces that I think a couple weeks ago, we were a lot more to sit there and say they're not going anywhere or they're likely not going anywhere. I know you've written extensively about the Jake DeBrusk contract negotiation saga that seems to have gone completely silent. Do you think they've reached a point with Jake DeBrusk where they're ready to just say, we're done here. Let's see if we can clear some cap room and move on from the player somehow, whether it be in a 3-team deal to try and get something back or as a quote unquote cap dump?
No. I believe, the last I've heard is they're making a last-ditch effort to sign him. Look, it's been a 5-month negotiation since DeBrusk come out and said, I want to stay here. I want to sign here. I'm leaving it all up to my agent, and I'm staying out of this negotiation. And then a couple of weeks later, Don Sweeney come out and said, well, Jake DeBrusk is going to have to let us know whether he wants to be here or not. Kind of contradictory, right? And they were both said in public. But that was 5 months ago, and there's no deal. The Bruins will sign him at their terms. Okay, that means no lockout protection, which is 2026, when it's the next possible lockout. The Bruins don't hand that out to like candy. They've given it to the likes of Zdeno Chara and Patrice Bergeron and David Pastrnak. David Krejci didn't even get it. So they're not giving it to Jake DeBrusk. It's going to have to be at their dollars and their terms. Otherwise, the Bruins are either going to let him play out the season and walk, or they're going to move him. Now, that said, the Bruins, they're not actively shopping him right now, but teams are contacting them about DeBrusk's availability. I know three of the teams that have Detroit, St. Louis, and Calgary.
Okay.
Okay.
Very interesting teams all the way around.
Yeah. Now, Detroit wants to make the playoffs. They're sitting in the first wild card spot right now, I believe. Calgary wants to make a push. And St. Louis is holding on by the skin of their teeth. Last time I looked at the standings.
Yeah, they're hovering around that playoff spot on the wild card side.
Now, if Sweeney had received an offer that was worth making, the deal probably be done right now, which tells me the deals are underwhelming. Well, actually, I can use a direct quote. The deals have been underwhelming.
Now, it's funny that you use that quote. That is what they said about the goaltending market over the offseason. Is that rumors were, and again, rumors are rumors, that there were inquiries into Ullmark. People were asking what it would take. People were making offers into the goaltenders, and Sweeney didn't like any of what he was hearing about it. So they obviously opted to keep both of them. Let's see.
Now, back to Ullmark. Like I've been asked, I don't know, maybe 50 times today, has Ullmark submitted his no trade list? I don't have his contract details in front of me. Don't bother looking up at Cap Friendly because they don't publish it. But I believe, I'm 99.9% sure that Ullmark's contract states he has to have his list in by September 1st.
So then, yes, the list would be in already.
The list would be in. That doesn't mean he can't change it. He can change it. The Bruins can ask him to waive, and he could say yes.
Right. Having the list of teams as early as September just allows you to sit there and negotiate freely with those teams. Even still, I mean, it's not like Ullmark has done anything so egregiously wrong that you don't want to have a conversation with him to say, hey, this team is interested in you. We feel we can get a good value in return for you. We want to do right by you as a player who we sought out. Let's not forget, we signed him as an unrestricted free agent to take over our net after Tuukka Rask.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're changing your plan. You kind of owe the guy a little bit of an explanation on that. Not to say he wouldn't understand, but as long as it's done right, you can still move him. Trey says that Bruins really need DeBrusk in a trade for Hanifin. Honestly, I wonder if you could get Chychrun and Pinto for Ullmark in a second. One, no. And two, absolutely not. Way not enough. Sweeney wants value. Dan wants to know if you would move on from Jake DeBrusk.
Me? If I was general manager?
Would you?
Yeah, I would.
I wouldn't say no based on the deal. As Swede Chef points out, Detroit has major cap space, so they can certainly help you out by taking a guy like DeBrusk off your books. But
St. Louis does.
I'm not giving him away, though. That's the thing.
St. Louis has, I believe, $7 million in LTIR space, so they could take him on easily too.
Yeah, because they have who did they put someone on LTIR, right?
I don't remember who, but they're the two teams that could take DeBrusk on without having to send Cap back and give you an asset that you could use in a trade for Noah Hanifin. Could you work out a three-way deal between St. Louis and Calgary? Yeah, you could, where DeBrusk ends up in St. Louis. But as I mentioned, Calgary has interest in DeBrusk too. So why would they want to deal with St. Louis where they're going after the player that you have some have expressed some interest in?
Sorry, Matrix. No, that wouldn't be enough. Beecher and Allmark for Pinto and Tarasenko. It's not enough.
No.
Not even close. Not to mention the fact that the money, because Tarasenko's on a $5 million deal by himself. Like, Pinto and Beecher don't wash that closely. As a Red Wing. Yeah, Jake. I do think Jake DeBrusk would be a good fit there. I've also heard that they have a high interest in re-signing Patrick Kane as well, which is also a good fit. He's proven to do very well for him. And David Perron, they want to re-sign him. So just because they're asking about Jake DeBrusk doesn't mean they're ready to pull the trigger on him. They just want to know what would it cost to get him, and that's one of those ones where, depending on where you're looking at it, like, I'm not going to sit here and say Jake Wallman straight up for Jake DeBrusk, but that's one where the salary works both directions, and it's a 1-for-1. And if they're that interested, then they pull the trigger. But is Wallman the answer for the issues that we're having on our left side? I don't know. I think they need more than what Jake Wallman brings.
Yeah.
Trey, I've heard Detroit likes Beecher a lot. I don't blame him. Beecher's a solid player. I think he's your 4C next year.
Yeah.
Would I include Beecher in a deal? Sure. But he's not the blue chip prospect that a Fabian Lysell or a Matthew Poitras is.
Absolutely.
Now, again, because when you think about the 3-team trade, like, also Detroit is looking to potentially move on from Jacob Markstrom. Now, the third team for that would be New Jersey. How much do you really want New Jersey to get help? You would have to play them to get to the Stanley Cup final. Now, again, as you said, it's a bridge year. How much do you care? Probably not as much as if it was last year, where you're trying to
exactly.
But does that mean you want the New Jersey Devils to get Jacob Markstrom? Probably not. Trey says, I think Lauko could be dealt as well. I think they like what Lauko brings. They're not, again, someone else that you're not actively shopping. But if a team says, like, he'd be the Curtis Lazar in a deal where if the team says, in order to get this guy, I want him with him. Like, they're willing to take 2 assets instead of 3 because they want Lauko instead. Then it's a different conversation.
Yeah. Jacob Lauko on his own isn't bringing you much.
No. I think people do overall, and this isn't to pick on, Trey, Dan, any of these guys, which Dan says, wouldn't you imagine Edmonton might have interest in both Allmark and Jake? Edmonton's made it pretty clear, from what I understand, that they're sticking with Stuart Skinner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that may be to their detriment, but
how is Edmonton going to take on $9 million in Allmark and DeBrusk?
Well, I think the thought there would be $5 million goes out the door in Campbell, but I'm not taking Campbell back in that deal.
No, absolutely not.
No, I got enough to figure out with my goaltending with my 2 RFAs next year in DiPietro and Bussy.
Exactly.
Now, you and I talked about 2 weeks ago, and then shortly thereafter, they ended up waiving Oscar Steen.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of our point. Like, a lot of people are very high on a lot of what the Bruins have. Like, yes, David Pastrnak is very clearly one of. Sorry, Sweet, you're not getting RNH and Cody Ceci back in the deal for Allmark and DeBrusk. You have to include a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, not happening.
That's going to include your first. That's going to include, like Lysell. That's going to include a lot more than just that. It's not realistic.
Let's face it. RNH signed a team-friendly deal
to play with McDavid.
And has a full no movement clause. He's not waiving to go anywhere.
No. So I think we can realistically say Pastrnak, Marchand, Coyle, Zacha are not going anywhere.
Right.
Anybody else in the forward group that you feel that I don't think they're looking to deal Trent Frederick, but if the right deal came along, can you see them pulling the trigger?
Yep.
Okay. Same question for Morgan Geekie.
Yes.
JVR.
Yes.
I feel like you would say the exact same thing for Lauko, Brazeau, Boquist, Heinen, or Anthony Richard.
Absolutely.
Now, this came up yesterday in someone that I was talking to. Do you believe that there's anything to them pairing Anthony Richard on the top line as a potential showcase? Or was it just Jim Montgomery throwing lines in a blender saying, let's see if we hit
He's
with something?
throwing lines in a blender. Like, you know.
Wasn't my idea. Just wanted your thoughts.
I mean, it just takes a little bit of logic. What's Anthony Richard going to get you in a trade? A 7th round pick? You don't showcase players like that.
No. I don't think he's that high on anybody's radar. Now,
No.
Could he be a player that a team looks at and says, okay, well, you want us to take this deal, throw in Richard and we'll call it a done deal?
As a throw-in, maybe, yeah. But he's not going to be a replacement on anybody else on the trade block. Like, for example, if you're offering Danton Heinen, they're not going to come in and say, no, we want Anthony Richard or no deal.
Right. I think with the bottom 6, you have to look at what you already have and what you've already seen. Like, I don't think they're looking to move on from Morgan Geekie. He's 25 years old. You got him for this year and next year. I think they look at him as someone who in a year and a half from now, they could re-sign to a longer term deal.
Sure, why not? But that's not taking him off the table for me.
No, it doesn't take him off.
Any GM.
I don't see them looking to move him right now.
Not actively shopping for him, no. But if a team come up and ask if they would make him available, you listen to the offer and say 100%. Yes or no.
100%. If someone comes up and asks that about David Pastrnak, you're saying, well, what's the offer?
Right.
Is it realistic? Now,
but Morgan Geekie, now if you're talking Connor Geekie, okay, different story. I'm not trading him until I at least see what he can do in the NHL. But Morgan Geekie, I know what he is. Right. Yeah, make me an offer.
So right now you have 3 holes on your defense for next year: Grzelcyk, Forbort, and Shattenkirk. I think there's a lot of people who are willing to drive all 3 to the airport tomorrow if they were included in a deal.
Yeah. Even if they're not included in a deal, I let them walk.
Absolutely. I would too. I mean, Shattenkirk, maybe if he's willing to take another, 1-by-1 or 2-by-1 deal or something like that. He hasn't been that bad.
No, but now he's playing every other game. Right. So I would rather take your core 3 in Lindholm, McAvoy, and Carlo. Include Lori in there.
Yep.
There's 4. You've now got to find a third pairing lefty, and
do you potentially have
a third pairing right D? Let me finish. And here's where Jacob Middleton comes in, because they are still talking about Jacob Middleton. Again, there's cap money to be moved around, but you have him for this year and for next year and potentially longer. So I could envision, yes, we'll get to Carrier a little later because they're still in discussions about him. but I could envision a Jacob Middleton and going out and getting somebody for the right side, or even giving Regula a shot to see what he can do out of camp.
Now, do you have what are your thoughts as far as Parker Wotherspoon? He's played better than a lot of people have anticipated this year based off of kind of where and how you got him, career AHLer to this point. Do you see him as being your seventh defenseman next year or potentially a third pairing left demon next year? Or do you just let him walk as an RFA and not qualify him?
Oh, no, I qualify him. He's my seventh D.
Okay.
And if I can't fill that right D spot, then he's my right D.
Yeah, I think Trey has it right here. He's a seventh defenseman on a contender. He's proven he can play the left or the right. He can play his offside. I want him as a seventh defenseman because of that durability. I want him to be that guy that you can cycle in. And, we were just talking about Shattenkirk getting every other game off. If you can do a rotation like they did last year with the bottom three, that's your pretty ideal scenario, or play them based off of matchup.
Yeah, I agree. The options for next year, which is why they're going to be careful with their trade this year. Whoever it is, whether they make a deal for Hanifin or they make a deal for Middleton, or Carrier's name just came up. They've had discussions about him. Heck, we go back a few months ago, you and I had talked about this. They also talked to Nashville about Dante Fabro.
Yep.
Right? It's the trade is not going to be for this year. It's going to be for next year. They know they've got their three. Where do we get the other three? Lorai's one of them, based on how he's playing right now.
Now, we've talked about Lorai not, because there's a lot of people who are saying throw him in there right now. He's ready. He still has a lot of learning to do. He still has some development left. The most promising thing about Mason Lorai is every time you have sent him down to Providence, he has come back and been better the next time he comes up. Right. So he is taking to the learning. He's not taking the demotions to Providence as a punishment. He's taking them as an opportunity to learn, to get better, to improve on his game and make it more difficult. Next year, he's a full-time NHLer at this point.
Right. And he'll be in their top four, depending on what else they do this year.
Now, do you like the idea of Lorai, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo better than Lindholm, McAvoy, Lorai, Carlo?
You know what? I've never really gave it any thought, but I'd be fine with either one.
I was going to say, or option C, doesn't fucking matter.
I don't think it matters because I think with Lorai playing with Carlo allows Lorai to do more offensively, knowing that Carlo is there to have his back.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put him with McAvoy, and look, we've all seen McAvoy talking to Lorai at different points between faceoffs in teaching moments, explaining to him what to do here and what to do there, right? But I think to pair him with McAvoy would take away from McAvoy's offensive abilities because he knows he has to be positionally sound defensively. So he might miss a pinch here knowing, hey, I've got to back up because I got to back up my partner.
Yeah, I think the offensive style of Lorai partnered with the overly, I don't want to say overly, but the excessive defensive abilities of Brandon Carlo, I think they match up well enough that for you to sit there and go, well, our top pairing is Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy, you're not complaining.
No.
It's like you got two-way defensemen partnered together. You have an offensive defenseman partnered with a defensive defenseman, all of who are, top four in a top four role, and then you can fill in the third pair. Now, Trey says, I would like, and I think a lot of Bruins fans would like, a Hanifin, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Lohrei, Carrier lineup on defense.
Too soft. That's the problem with this defense this year. It's too soft. You have, as an example, like that I mentioned earlier about possibilities for next year in Middleton and Regula as your bottom pair. They're the big, strong, physical guys that will clean out the front of the net. They're the big, strong, physical guys that'll say, hey, you want to touch Jeremy Swayman?
You got to go through me.
Yeah, here's a left fist, right? Or in Regula's case, a right fist because he's a right-handed.
Regula, just to put it out there, Regula is listed at 6'4", 208. So there's a right side, big body. He's only 23, so it's not exactly like you're not going to be able to get him for a potential multi-year deal if you think he can do it. That's someone mentioned earlier in the comments. Don Sweeney looks for value. Alec Regula, with the way he's been playing in Providence and his development, is prime to get like a 3 by 1.5 contract from Don Sweeney. It may not be the best deal in the first year, but by year 2 and 3 at the NHL level, he's on fire.
It's possible.
Exactly that. Now, I don't think it's going to come to that. You're more likely to see probably a 1 for 1.5 and see what he does, or 1 for 1. Get him up to the next level, get him in on the third pairing role, see how he handles the NHL, and go from there. I think that's a more realistic option for him.
I think he'll get a look this year for a game or two just to see how he handles it, and they'll know better what they want to do.
Let's see. Swede Chef wants to know if you think Dumbo would be a good fit on D with this team.
No, it's not what they're looking for. He's a UFA?
Yes, he signed a 1-year deal with Arizona.
Yeah,
and I think this year's deal that's where the 3.9 AAV comes from, is from this year's deal, I think. Trey says, what about Hanifin, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Lohrei, Lyubushkin?
That's better. But you know what? I honestly don't think they need Noah Hanifin. I don't. In a couple of years, Mason Lohrei is going to be your Noah Hanifin. I know Bruins fans are infatuated. Some Bruins fans are infatuated with Hanifin because he's from Boston, and
it's funny. Go ahead. I know where you're going with it.
That's where the infatuation is, and there's some stupid rumor that in 2015 they were moving up. They were trying to move up in the draft to get Noah Hanifin, and I have repeatedly said, and this comes right from the Boston Bruins, someone who would know, who's at the draft table, no, we were not after Hanifin. We wanted Werenski.
Yes. You have said that over and over and over again. I know that story. I love it when people come out and say they wanted Hanifin. No, they wanted Werenski. They would have taken Provorov. They would have taken Hanifin if Werenski was off the board.
Right.
The whole point is they were trying to trade up to get a defenseman. Period. They had them ranked with Werenski first. I don't know. Maybe you have a better idea if they were higher on Hanifin than Provorov or the other way around. But
yeah, Provorov was third on the list.
they wouldn't have said no to any of them if they had been able to move up in the draft. That is why Don Sweeney took all 3 picks. He had them because he accumulated them in an effort to try to use 2 of them to move up. Right. Nobody wanted to make that deal. They wanted, if I'm not mistaken, they wanted all 3 picks to move up.
Yes. Carolina did.
And does that play a role in why Carolina took Hanifin, or did they just want Hanifin bad enough that they looked at it and said, if you're going to give us all 3 picks, we'll move. But if you're not, we'll take our guy.
Yeah, you got to believe that Hanifin was their guy, but how long did he last in Carolina before they moved him for Dougie Hamilton?
Actually, that's a good question. I'm pulling it up right now. He spent 3 years in Carolina, 6 years in Calgary. So, and Trey, I want to know. All right, you said he missed on all 3. Zboril, Zboril, DeBrusk, and Senyshyn. Okay. First and foremost, I want to know what you consider to be a hit on a draft pick. Because maybe he missed on those guys, on those picks, but Don Sweeney doesn't have as bad of a draft record as you would think. You're going to focus on those 3 picks in his first year at the draft table, but that was also the year that they got Brandon Carlo. Was that a miss?
They also got Jeremy Lauzon in that draft.
They got Jeremy Lauzon in that draft, who has proven to be a solid NHL player. Yes, he's moved on to another team, but he's still a hit. So if you have 5 draft picks in a draft and you hit on 2 solid NHL players, most GMs will take that. And if
Trey, let me tell you that the Athletic analyzed NHL drafts since I believe 2009 was the year. And most people in hockey circles use 100 games to be successful, to consider a pick successful. They took it to 200 games. And you know where the Bruins ranked in the draft in success?
I'm going to say 3rd.
They ranked as the 4th most successful team in the NHL in drafting since 2009. Now, everybody blames Don Sweeney for the draft in 2015. Okay. Don Sweeney was direct. What was he? He was in Adam McQuaid's role as
Director of player personnel?
No. Director of Player Development.
That's the one.
Okay. His job in 2015 was the same as Adam McQuaid's right now. He was hired in May of that year, I believe.
It was about a month before the draft.
A month before the draft. There was no way for Don Sweeney to go out and do any scouting. He didn't know the players in the draft because he was busy coaching and teaching the Bruins' own prospects all over the world, whether they're playing in the J20 National in Sweden, or they're playing for the London Knights in the OHL, or whether they're playing for the Sioux Falls Stampede in the USHL. That was his job.
Yeah.
He had no knowledge of the draft. What did he do? He turned it over to
the scouts.
His scouts, which is what he's supposed to do. And they let him down. Now, you look at the Bruins scouting department in 2016 compared to 2015, it changed. It changed again in 2017. It changed again in 2018. Don Sweeney kept adding and adding and adding, not just bodies, but the right people. Like Bob Whittick, fabulous scout does the OHL for the Bruins. He was actually the Ontario Hockey League's director of scouting for years, and then the North Bay Battalion before the Bruins hired him on. He found Matthew Poitras. He found Jackson Edward. The Bruins OHL scout in 2015 was Mike Chiarelli. Yes, Peter Chiarelli's brother. And I have talked about it on Twitter. I've talked about it on social media. In 4 years that he was with the Bruins, I saw him once in an arena. I see Bob Whittick once a week when I'm in an OHL rink.
There's a difference there.
So that's not Don Sweeney. You can blame Don Sweeney till you're blue in the face. But it wasn't Don Sweeney's doing.
I want to get to a few of Trey's comments here. He's saying, you don't get it. They had 3 back-to-back mid-first round picks, and they messed up on all 3 with guys who are very good all around you, connecting Kyle Connor, Matthew Barzal, etc. And he's saying, I'm not saying they messed up the entire draft. They messed up the biggest first round in recent years for the Bruins. Trey, the problem with that mindset is you are neglecting every other pick in the draft. You are looking at the 3 that they had in consecutive order and going miss, miss, miss. Okay, well, let me throw a name out there for you. All right, Anthony Cirelli. He went 72 overall, which means 71 teams. I don't care what team they were. Tampa twice. Everybody else twice. Everybody else. 71 teams passed on Anthony Cirelli before drafting him. You would argue that's a mistake. Keegan Colasar went 69th overall. It happens throughout the draft. You have hits, you have misses. It doesn't matter. Remember when we had Kalen Booth in the system for Boston? Yeah, he never played in the NHL, but you know what? Carolina drafted him in the 4th round with the 93rd pick. It's a miss. Don't even get me started on our 4th round pick that year, Jesse Gabriel. Boy, does Don have some stories for you on that guy.
Oh, yeah, we won't go there.
All right. The point is you're focused on 3 things that happened. No, they didn't miss pick 14 because they messed up 13. They didn't mess up 15 because they messed up 14, messing up 13. No, they looked at players that were available. They made decisions to pick one over another. And the 3 they picked, Senyshyn was actually picked, if I'm not mistaken, right around where people projected him to go. He just didn't pan out.
Zaboral
I think
was
their
picked.
biggest reach.
Zaboral wasn't a reach. Senyshyn was a reach. I knew the Bruins.
I knew which one it was.
I knew the Bruins were interested in Senyshyn. As a matter of fact, I said, watch the Bruins and Senyshyn. But I thought it was the 2nd round, not the 1st round.
Right. Anthony Beauvillier, by the way, 28th overall. You're going to tell me 27 teams missed on him? Sure. I would agree with you. Based on your sentiment, yeah, 27 teams screwed up and missed on Anthony Beauvillier.
I'm not saying they didn't screw up. What I'm saying is this blame thrown towards Don Sweeney is uncalled for.
I'm not saying they didn't screw up either. What I'm saying is if you're trying to narrow it down to, well, they screwed this up, so therefore they suck. No.
But they did suck, though, Chris. And Don Sweeney
did suck, yes. And even
Don Sweeney,
they weren't good picks.
Don Sweeney went on to rectify the problem that was the scouting department. It wasn't his scouting department. He had a month.
And then, and here's the thing: the very following year. What are you talking about? Nobody said what, Trey. What are we reaching for? All right. The very following year, as soon as he started cycling through the scouting department, 14 overall, Charlie McAvoy, 29th overall, Trent Frederick, 49th overall, Ryan Lindgren, NHLer. Even though you don't have Ryan Lindgren anymore, you traded him in the Rick Nash deal. Oh, by the way, Oscar Steen was 165 overall that year. So you actually went essentially almost 4 for 6 the following year. That's your people are insinuating that they suck at drafting because of those 3 picks, Trey. That's what I'm getting at. And would it have been helpful if they had hit and gotten, all-star, all-star, all-star? Yeah, of course. It would also help if instead of drafting Joona Koppanen in the 5th round of the 2016 draft, they went with, I don't know, let me pick another name off of here for you. Brandon Hagel. There you go. It would help. Sure. Drafting good players always helps. It's duh. But you're focusing on the first round. You have to look at the entire draft, especially given the fact that over the last, 4 or 5 years, let's see, 2013, first pick, 92nd overall, 3rd round, 2022, first pick, 2nd round, 54. That was, by the way, Matthew Poitras. Their last first round pick was 21st overall, and that was Fabian Lysell. And then before that, 30th, John Beecher. If you're a good team, you're making late picks in the first round. Your first round pick is almost a second rounder.
Well, let's face it. 6 years ago, they were second round picks.
Right. So in that, with that mindset, first round, second round, 7th round, doesn't matter. Pick good players. Build and develop your players and just focus on building the franchise. Putting in systems that develop players. That's what Don Sweeney did. That's exactly what you're talking about. He went out, he got a scouting department put together that finds players that their development program can bring to the NHL level. That's why you have a guy 220th overall last year. We've talked about him before. Christian Konstadinsky. He's a work in progress. But if you can get him to the NHL from a 220th overall selection, that's your player development plan.
Oscar Steen was the most successful player chosen in his round in his draft year.
Yeah, he was 165, 6th round. Like, yeah, does it suck to see some of your first rounders go out the door? Or Hovakanainen? I'm sorry. I like Lindholm better.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And as Swede Chef says, the Bruins have had a top club for the last 14 plus years, most wins in that time. And this is why, and we've talked about it before, when places like The Athletic come out and they go, the Bruins are 30th in prospect pool.
Well, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Their average first pick is what? 39th overall over the last 5 years? Is it 50 something? Like, they're not picking in the top 10 on average. They should have a bad prospect pool. That's why you want a good player development program. That's why we look at guys this year down in Providence. Guys like Trevor Kuntar, Luke Toporowski, John Farinacci. Georgi Merkulov, wasn't he an undrafted free agent?
Mm-hmm.
Georgi Merkulov, you go out, you find him, and now people love him. John Beecher, a lot of people were upset with that pick at the time. Who is this guy? What's he going to be? Ceiling as a third-line center. What are they doing? Well, right now he fits your team. A lot of people are bitching that he's down in Providence.
Chris, 14% of NHL players last year that played in the NHL were first-round picks. 14% out of 800 players.
Yeah, you know what that means?
More players make the NHL as undrafted free agents than second round picks.
You know what that means? 86% weren't first round picks.
Right.
Period. And it's fine. It's not a matter of where you get them from or how you get them. It's a matter of going out and getting the right ones. Yes. But this is why, like, people coming into the year, Boston wanted to do everything they could to protect the 2025 first round pick. Understandably, they haven't made a first round pick in, what did we say, 3-4 years now?
Yeah.
Does that mean you can't deal it away? No, it doesn't. If you're going to get if you're going to get a guy like a Noah Hannafin or a Jacob Middleton, and he's going to be under contract for, let's say, a minimum of the rest of this year and maybe 2 more, your first round pick is worth that.
And let's face it, if the season ended today, the Bruins would be picking, if they had a first round pick, it would be 28th. Unless they went on to the Stanley Cup Finals and won somehow. They'd be picking 28th. I could probably name half a dozen undrafted free agents available right now or will be on June 1st that'll be better than that 28th pick that they'd be drafting.
Let's see. Trey says, Chris, don't you see where I'm coming from, though? Like, as a fan, it would have been nice if they hit on one of those top talents in that first round. They are not a bad drafting team. I'm not dwelling on the 2015 draft. I'm telling you, get over it. It was almost 10 fucking years ago. Move on. Because even if they had drafted one of those top talents, there's no guarantee they'd be here now 10 years later. Look at Noah Hannafin. He's trying to go on to his third team. Move on from it.
And let me just add this. Jakub Zaboral was taken where he was supposed to. That's not on the Bruins that he didn't make it. That's on Jakub Zaboral.
That and 2 season-ending injuries with a COVID sandwich.
Yeah.
Like, again, I feel for the guy because he was just starting to come into it, knee injury. Just starting to come back from it, COVID. Then another knee. Like, you feel bad for the guy, but that's not on the Bruins. Just like Rick Nash getting a career-ending concussion that he decided to walk away from. That deal 3 years later, if he was still on this team, looks so much better. But he retired. That's not on the Bruins. I would much rather have Ryan Lindgren on this team knowing that Rick Nash retired.
Definitely.
Can't undo it, though. Like, don't live in the past, Trey. Live in where they are right now. First of all, Providence is fucking tearing it up. They have two of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League and 2 of the best goaltenders in the American Hockey League. And now you have to make a decision on which 2, if you want to keep 2 of your own, are you going to keep? And if you're not going to keep 2 of your own, which ones do you deal?
With a third one on the way in Reed Dick.
I was going to say a 5th one.
So, okay, a 5th one.
A 5th one.
On the way.
How far out do you think Reed Dick is from the NHL, realistically?
3 years.
So Trey says, I would roll with Swayman and DiPietro. Who's ceiling of the 3? If you had to keep 2 for the next 10 years, Swayman, DiPietro, Reed Dick, which 2 are you riding for the next 10 years?
Me?
Yes.
And
I'll let you throw Brandon Bussey in there too. And yes, you can, if you want to select Reed Dick, and you think
I'm going to go Swayman and Dick. 6'5" goalies who are as athletic as him and who does nothing but give your team a chance to win every night. To me, easily, he's the MVP of that team, and he won't be because he had 2 injuries, really bad injuries.
I was going to give you the caveat that you could sign a bridge veteran to back up Swayman if you needed to for 2 or 3 years.
Well, yeah, I mean,
anyway,
I'm not trading Reed Dick. As a matter of fact, as soon as I can sign him this offseason, I'm putting his ink to a contract.
I will say this: Sweet Chef picked this one up. 2015 draft. 3 of the top 5 picks are on different clubs than the ones that drafted him, and 5 of the top 10 are on different clubs. So, again, just because you draft him doesn't mean you're keeping him.
Okay, who went first overall?
2015, that would have been crap. Was that the Eichel draft? I got it right here. That was the McDavid draft. McDavid, Eichel, Strome, Marner, Hanifin.
Okay.
Were your top 5.
Okay. Now, Strome, Marner. I will never understand why Arizona drafted Strome over Marner. I will never, ever, ever understand it.
Well, we could also do this. After you had Strome went 3rd, and then you had Zacha 6th. After that, your next 2 forwards were Timo Meier and Mikko Rantanen. Oh, and Lawson Krause right after that, by the way.
Okay, but we talk about misses that draft. Arizona, big miss.
On Marner, on Werenski, on Meyer, on Rantanen, like Arizona whiffed bigger than Boston did on their 3 picks because they had the 3rd pick. They had more to pick from. Also with that being said, fine, they also whiffed. They could have gone Barzal, Connor, Shabbat, or Svechnikov as well. Or sorry, that's Evgeny, not anyway. Trey says, I'm not very familiar with Reed Dick. I just know the guys in Providence right now. Well, keep tuning in, Trey, because we talk about the guys in Maine. We talk about the guys in the OHL. Jackson Edward, what is going on with him, Dom? Why does he keep getting suspended?
This one is so stupid. So the OHL has a rule. If you interfere with a television camera, it's an automatic suspension. Okay. So I forget who they were playing. Doesn't matter. But I'm standing there and I'm watching this, and I see this heavyweight bout about to start. The guy was actually bigger than Edward, but Edward was he didn't care. He was ready to drop the gloves and go at it. When one of the Bolton brothers came in, Edward's teammate, and started getting into it with this guy. Now, the Boltons can fight. So Edward turned around and went after somebody else and had him against the boards. He was ready to pelt him, man. The linesman got in there. They broke it up. And Edwards was getting a game misconduct or for unsportsmanlike conduct, I guess, going after the other player. On his way out, you could see him just take a swipe at the fucking camera, right? That is a 2-game suspension, which is exactly the same he got for a nasty headbutt he threw 2 weeks ago.
So Trey says that Jackson Edward is a shit show. First of all, damn good thing you got him with the 7th round pick.
But no, he's exactly what the Boston Bruins need.
I was just going to say.
What has to happen?
He's got the grit that we need.
Adam McQuaid has to get in there and teach him not to cross the line. But he's exactly what the Bruins need. The unfortunate part is that he's got a reputation now.
Yeah.
And the referees have their eyes out for him. Now, when Jackson Edward makes the NHL, these same referees that are calling his games in junior, some of them are likely going to be in the NHL. Okay. The
Yeah.
NHL pays the CHL millions of dollars a year to develop officials right now because their own officials suck. Okay. And that's
We're
what
going
the
to get to that real quick to round out the show in a minute.
So he's getting a reputation, and referees talk. They'll say, keep an eye on this guy. He's a hothead. Like slashing people in the ankles long after the whistle is gone. He doesn't need that in his game. Jackson Edward doesn't. He's got to cut down on the stuff, but he's exactly what the Bruins need.
And if you want proof that the referees talk, there's a great documentary. I think it's on Netflix about about Tim. I think it was Tim Donaghy, the referee from the NBA. He just dives in about how, or no, it was a different official. Just dives in about how, all about how he was on the take as far as some calls and stuff like that. But he just talks about life as an official. Yeah, it's in the NBA, but same concept. They talk. They meet in their own locker room. This guy did this on this day and took me out, so let's keep an eye on him. And we've had hot mics before. Yeah, I wanted to make a call on that team to even it up. It happens. You can't bullshit it. We know, we see it. So I think your point there answers Trey's question here. Do you think Jackson Edward makes the NHL someday? Because you did say when. And then also, what about Ryan Mast and Frederick Brunet?
Edwards, definitely. Brunet, I'm a little bit iffier on. A lot of things have to go right for him, but he's really starting to get it in the American Hockey League now. So let's give him the rest of this season and next season how he goes. Ryan Mast, hard to say how he's doing against pros because right now he's playing in Maine. I'll tell you the guy to really, really watch is Ethan Ritchie. I'll tell you two guys to watch. Ethan Ritchie, who's signed to an American Hockey League deal, is playing in Maine, has been called up for a couple of times to Providence. I think he could be a player. I'm not talking top pairing, but he could play in the NHL. And another guy is Adam Matura playing in Maine. He's been called up to the American Hockey League a couple of times. He's on an AHL deal. The Bruins signed him as an undrafted free agent last summer after he attended development camp and the rookie camp. This guy just puts up points like it's no tomorrow. I think he's from the Czech Republic or Slovakia. No, Czech Republic. So there's a couple of guys to watch that sort of like Luke Toporowski, but Matura is a big boy. I think he's like 6'4" or 6'5". I bet you Chris is looking it up right now.
I'm trying to find him. I was also trying to think of some of the other guys that we've talked about as well. I mean, there's plenty of guys in the system. I mean, you've mentioned Oscar Jelvik before.
Oh, yeah. I've been watching that guy play for 3 years now. That guy's going to be a player.
Is that Loch Mellis?
Loch Mellis. I Americanize it. Loch Mellis. I'll tell you a sleeper. We were talking earlier about a sleeper in Patra. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Trevor Kuntar makes the Boston Bruins next year.
Yes, we've talked about him a little bit before as well. Trey says, I love Ethan Ritchie. And what about Mike Callahan?
I think Callahan is what he is now. I think if he's going to make it to the NHL, it won't be with Boston. I mean, they've got Lindholm, Lorei on the left. If they bring in a Middleton, or somebody else at trade deadline on the left, there's just no room for him. There's no path. I mean, Waterspoon's ahead of him at right now, so there just isn't a path to the NHL with Boston for him, and it's too bad because I like him as a player.
So obviously, we'll be back again next week. We'll have a lot more to go over. Maybe we'll do something special for the trade deadline that evening or afternoon after all the deals have coming across. See if the Bruins pull the trigger on something. They don't play again until Thursday. I mean, it's possible they pull the trigger on a deal between now and Thursday.
Yeah, the people were expecting something on the weekend, but no, they're on a 4-game Western swing. They didn't have the opportunity or the time to move players around. It's hard to do while you're on the road, but they
unless you're on the road like that during on the trade deadline, you're not pulling something off.
Right. So now that they're home, something could happen. I would say at the earliest, probably the weekend if they're going to do something.
Well, then they have road games against Islanders on Saturday and on Monday in Toronto. So they do go for another small little roadie. And actually next Thursday is back home against Toronto as well. So they got they got the home game on Thursday, March 7th going into the trade deadline.
So Monday to Thursday is a lot of time. And even on Long Island or Toronto, if they have to call a body up from Providence,
it's not hard.
It's easy done. It's not like it's Vancouver. So let's just say St. Louis, for example, pulls the trigger on DeBrusk and says, okay, sit him out tonight. The Bruins need a body. They can get one to Long Island or to Toronto easy enough.
Now, I want to get away from the prospects and talk about going forward, but here's a question. Let's say St. Louis says, sit DeBrusk, we want him, we're going to pull the trigger on this deal. If you move on from Jake DeBrusk, who's your fill-in spot? Are you calling up Fabian Lysell for that role?
I'm giving him a shot.
I would agree.
I'm giving him a shot. Like, he's the natural right winger in Providence.
And if you can go next year with Pastrnak, Lysell on the right, and then you have Coyle, Zacha down the middle, or Poitras even down the middle in one of those spots, and then you have Marchand and who would be your next left wing if not Frederick. You're pretty paced well. You got a couple scorers on the right side, two-way centerman, and some physical guys. You have a scoring touch on the left side.
Well, and let's face it, they could go out and sign, let's say, an Elias Lindholm in the summer and move Zacha to the left wing.
Yep. Then you
got Marchand, Zacha. Yep. Next year there are so many options with $26 million in cap space.
That's the thing that Sweeney loves, is just having options. Yes, I think the next time we see Poitras, he will have to put some muscle on and be ready.
I'm telling you, this guy works hard in the summertime.
And I'm telling you, that is the reason that he got the shoulder surgery when he did.
Yeah.
Because now his recovery time will put him right in the thick of the summer where they can put him on a weight regimen so he can build up the body. And I mean, he showed this year alone his work ethic. This kid is going to work his ass off.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell him we need you to put on 20 pounds, he's going to sit there and go, how can I put on 30?
Yeah, exactly.
23 out of 20, and you're like, what the fuck happened to this kid?
I'll tell you, the question I got asked the most after the draft is, Dom, Matthew Poitras or David Goyette? And I hummed and hawed, and I make a reason why either one would have made sense for the Bruins. But I tell you right now, it's no contest. It's Matthew Poitras all the way.
Yeah, I definitely think that's one that we're going to look back at and go, they nailed that one. But like I said, looking forward, we've got, what do we say, 3 games before the trade deadline? Let's see. Today is the
I think
20th.
it's 4.
You got at home on Thursday against Vegas, on the road against the Islanders, on the road in Toronto, and then
At home against Toronto.
Against Oilers on Tuesday, March
Oh,
5th. And then at home against Toronto on the 7th.
so five games.
So you got 5 games. None of them are really all that far because Edmonton's coming to you. How many deals do you see before the deadline for this Bruins team?
1.
One hockey deal, as they say, or tinker around the edges kind of type of thing?
I think by March 7th, by the time the game against Edmonton is no, Toronto's the 7th.
Yeah.
By the time they drop the puck against Toronto, we'll see a Jake DeBrusk signing or a Jake DeBrusk trade.
Okay.
And I'm leaning towards trade, just because teams are calling and that they've gone 5 months and still haven't been able to get a contract done.
And come that game on March 9th against Pittsburgh, are we still looking at either Swayman or Ullmark in net and Swayman or Ullmark on the bench? Will they be our duo?
Yes. That's my guess. I don't think they had any intention of trading either one this season.
Here's my thought to wrap up when it comes to that overall in the goaltending market. Nashville just pulled Saros off the market, quote, as long as they're in a playoff spot, unquote. Markstrom's available. I've heard Tristan Jarry's name thrown out there.
Tristan Jarry's name is out there.
Martin Jones's name is out there for Toronto, just so they don't lose him for nothing. They're now getting healthier between the pipes. There are more goaltenders out there to soften the market. Mm-hmm. No one's going to overpay you for Ullmark.
No.
And no one's going to overpay you in the offseason. If you're going to look to deal a goaltender, Swayman or Bussey are the guys. They're the two that you look to move. Swayman would net you more anyway because people are going to look at him as a higher end netminder. Ullmark has also proven he can take a younger netminder under his wing and help develop him. Mm-hmm. However it is necessary, whether it's making him feel at home in the locker room, a part of the team. Yeah, you're competent. Like we've seen it with him and Swayman. We couldn't have asked for a better mentor for Jeremy Swayman.
No. And he could do the same for Bussey. But if the Bruins are intent on going into next season with Ullmark and Swayman, you absolutely have to trade Brandon Bussey.
100%.
You have to, because he requires waivers and he ain't going to clear.
And you're not going to get much for his rights.
No. So if you're looking to make a hockey trade right now, Brandon Bussey could be enticing to a team.
Especially a cap-tightened team that's looking to build their goaltending depth.
Right.
I mean, also, honestly, if he would also look enticing to a team. Like, I've looked at the depth in goal in Anaheim. They don't have much. Gibson, Stolarz, and it's a huge drop-off. Mm-hmm. If they have hopes and desires to want to move on from John Gibson, then a guy like Brandon Bussey would be a good guy to bring in, so you have a tandem of Bussey and Stolarz. So there's reasons he'd be enticing for a lot. Trey says, similar to a Bauer-Kincaid trade. sorry, Trey. Dostal, not Stolar. Stolar's is the one that went to Florida. My bad. But yes, Dostal. Substitute what I just said, Dostal in, and it all applies. Misspoke.
Bowers, Kincaid trade. Well, Kincaid wanted out.
Yeah, because he was supposed to be the guy in Providence.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't.
And Bussy beat him out. Now, was Bowers traded after?
I was actually just going to go pull him up because I don't recall what happened with Bauer.
I'm pretty sure he was traded after.
You know what? I think they did flip him. Yeah, they flipped him to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find the deal. What would that be under? Let me try. Also, real quick, shout out Puckpedia for adding in some new features.
Yeah, that I'm telling you, this is awesome.
You sent those my way. Yes, thank you, Trey. He was dealt to New Jersey for Riley Walsh.
Riley Walsh, that's what it was.
That's what it was. But Trey, I still had to shout out Puckpedia, right? I mean, did you see what they added today? They added the pick value calculator and the cap relief calculator. Like, come on.
And this was created by Jeff, I forget his name, who was the head of analytics for the Arizona Coyotes. Can you put it up, Chris? Or
yes, it was Matt Purry, Perri.
Yeah.
Let's see. I will pull up this here and just show it real quick. I know we have to get going here, but I do want to share these cool little new toys on our fun little sites here. This one is the Perry Salary Cap Relief Calculator. So you can put in the amount, the AAV of the cap hit that's being traded, how much of the cap hit is left on the season. So figure that out based off of, it's what, 24% left at the end of the trade deadline, roughly. So you put your 24% in there. How much is being relieved? So let's say you have a $1 million AAV. So let's say it's JVR, and you're getting a third team to take on the 25%, which would be $250,000. It would cost you roughly the 155th overall pick
to get a team to bite and take it.
Get a team to bite on that. So that's a 5th round pick, estimated to be late 5th rounder. So if someone came to you and said, well, we have an early 6th round pick, you kind of should take it. Like,
yeah,
they have to put a 0 or a 1 in because that's how computers talk. But at the end of the day, this is supposed to give you a general idea because we all like to play armchair general manager, and it's fun. Let's face it. That's what we have. It's fun. Talking.
I can't wait to test, see how accurate it is.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll do a little bit of homework. I'll use some of the deals from last season. Minnesota got involved in the deal with Boston and Washington. Let's see what those were. Let's see how spot on they were. I'll have those answers for us, and hopefully we have some to test out from this year. And then the other one was the draft pick calculator. So let's say you're trying to include your 1st round pick and your 5th round, your 2nd and your 5th rounder. Let's say 36th overall and 143 overall. Your value is 9232 right down here. So, if you're trying to move up in the draft in the later round, I don't know, I'm rushing through this, so bear with me. They're saying this ain't even close. Find fair trade. Let's see. So it'd be 2 third-round picks. That doesn't seem right. Oh, well.
We'll play with it and figure it out for next episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to see what that total draft pick value is. I honestly haven't had too much to play around with it. I got home probably about 20 minutes before we jumped on here, and I had to eat. So Puckpedia is adding new things. That's awesome. I will also shout out, obviously, we also enjoy Cap Friendly. They have their new basketball version. So if you're an NBA fan, check it out.
Yeah.
Shout out to these guys. We wouldn't know half the stuff we don't know if we don't know to look there. So,
you'd still have me.
Yes.
I'll keep you up to date on the Cap.
Absolutely. And I do have a question for you after. But any final thoughts as we look to head out of here and look to go into another week of hopefully fewer overtime games?
Yeah, that's all I'm hoping for. I'm at the point now with no expectations. Just sit back and watch some hockey and enjoy it. And hopefully they don't frustrate me anymore.
Absolutely. We will try and do this again same time next week. I think that's a good thing to shoot for so that all of our viewers can try and join us week over week. But again, we will be putting this out on the pod via Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere that you want to find a pod. Just fucking Google What's Bruin with Chris and Dom, and we'll come up. Swede wants to know if we are going to do any predictions.
I don't do predictions. Wait, predictions on the Bruins season?
Or on the games, I think.
On the what?
I think he means on the games for the upcoming week.
No, I did that last week, and I try not to do it.
You cursed us with every game going to overtime, so that is why we don't do it, Swede.
I just want to beat the Leafs. That's it.
I got to see if I can track him down. But when we used to do this on an old network, we used to always have someone come in, and their only comment was, "Fuck the Leafs."
Yeah. Who was that?
I don't remember.
Was it Andrew?
No, it wasn't Andrew. But speaking of which, I got to get him on to do another episode of Puck Off. I know he's had some stuff going on, but we'll work on that. Do have some exciting news for Puck Off coming out soon. We do have a couple new sponsors that we're looking at partnering with. Obviously, I mentioned earlier in the show, if you have your own pets, dogs, Nason's Natural is a great partner for us. All of our listeners get 15% off on nasonnaturals.com. They're homemade, handmade dog treats. And they're actually a very, very good value purchase too. Like, we're not, just because they're homemade doesn't mean they're crazy expensive, but you do get the 15% off with the promo code PUCKOFF at your checkout. So definitely worth looking into them. And also our friends over here at the Hockey Podcast Network and DraftKings. I know we probably don't want to put too much money on our Bruins because it's a coin flip every night, whether or not OT is a thing. But yeah, check them out. It's fun. Throw a little bit down, nothing more than you can spare to lose. Any last thoughts other than go Bees?
Go Bees. That's all I got.
All right, guys.
We got to get Andrew on here.
Oh, we can get Andrew on here. We can do a joint venture of Puck Bruin or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Maybe I'll try and convince him to do something on the trade deadline day. So,
all right.
But like I said, I do have a question for you after everyone else. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Go Bees.
Go Bees.